This video is sponsored by Isol-8, manufacturers of the mains conditioner and power cords used by a British audiophile. For more information about these and their other products, please click the link in the description. Hello everyone, a little bit of a different video for you this week. I'm going to give you a tour of my new listening room. I've actually been in here for a couple of months, but I made a series of improvements both aesthetically but more importantly sonically to get it to where I wanted it to be. And people have been asking me, Taryn, what's that product in the corner? What item do you have there? And hopefully I can answer all those queries today, as well as the improvements that some of these products have brought from my own subjective perspective. But before I get started, I should point out that I do have channel sponsors, and a number of the items that you're going to see today are from channel sponsors. I should also point out that I only have channel sponsors in areas that I don't review and only products that I actually believe in. But if you're offended by that kind of stuff, perhaps this video isn't for you. Okay, let's get started. This room is approximately 4 meters wide. I say approximately because it varies due to these very large windows that are very deep and run pretty much along the majority of the left hand side, and it's about 3.6 meters to the back there, and the height of the room is 2.8 meters. So for my American friends, that's approximately 14 feet by 12 feet by 9 feet. And it's not constructed to any golden ratio because I inherited this room. A room constructed to a golden ratio would ensure that there was no direct mathematical relationship between the width, the height and the length. You'd use prime numbers so that standing waves don't sit on top of each other, and that isn't the case here because, as I said, I inherited this room. It's not been purpose built. The construction of the walls themselves, well, this wall, which is the external wall apart from the windows of course, is made out of close to 1 meter 3 feet of stonework, because it's a very old barn conversion, close to, well, another 25 years it'll be 700 years old. And the other walls are block work, apart from this wall where you see that big 77-inch OLED TV, because I did want to keep this room as a 2-channel AV system room for the family to enjoy as well. So behind that TV all the way down were double doors opening up to the hallway, and I filled that with insulation, and that was studded out. So probably I should say at least half of that wall is studded and half of it's block work, and all the other internal walls are made out of breeze block. So very inert acoustically, but they do trap a bit of bass energy. So sometimes what I do is I open up those French doors a little bit just to let a little bit of bass pressure out. But I'll come to that. Now, okay, so what I did with this room is I put in a dedicated mains supply. So let me talk you through that, because in that left-hand corner behind the larger acoustic panel is where the power outlet is for the dedicated mains. This is the business end of the dedicated mains supply, and what you see are 3 sockets on the wall, a twin and a single. The single is interesting because it's not a conventional socket. It's called the Lens. It's unfortunately no longer in production. It used to retail for about £500. A friend of mine used to make these, and he kindly gave me one. What it has is mechanical as well as electrical isolation. I'm not sure if you can see that, but there's a gap between the bit that goes into the wall and the metal plate on the front. So dedicated mains comes directly with no switches in the signal path to that socket, and then is fed from that to 2 additional sockets, because I wanted more than one just in case I had too much loading with various devices. Those 2 sockets are also not quite conventional. There's no switches. You don't want switches in there because they'll be a source for electrical noise, even though perhaps modern regs for electricity dictate that you should have them. But this is not a conventional setup. And they are cryogenically treated. They're MK plugs which are cryogenically treated. You can pick them up from eBay for about £30, so not expensive. And yes, there is a difference in sound quality. It may be subtle, but there is a difference in sound quality when I plug the HiFi into the Lens compared to the MK sockets. Another thing to note is if you're going to the trouble of having a dedicated power supply for your HiFi, you don't want to run it off your main consumer unit. A lot of people sometimes use a spur or an additional spur on their main consumer unit, and that can be a source for noise. Get a dedicated small little consumer unit so the mains power supply has its own consumer unit. If you're going to this much trouble, that little extra expense is worthwhile. The cable itself is interesting, which you can't see because it's in the wall, so I'll post a picture of it up. It's Belden 83803. It's a 12 gauge cable with tin copper conductors and a Teflon insulation. Teflon's one of the best dielectric materials that you can get. Good quality dielectrics just separate the electrical and magnetic fields out better to preserve the integrity of signal. In cheap cables, you get PVC, which has a dielectric constant of about 5. Pay a little bit more, you'll get PE or polyethylene, which has a dielectric constant of around 2.5 to 3. The PTFE or Teflon insulation, as it's commonly referred to, has a dielectric constant typically of around 1.2 for the aerated versions, up to about 1.8. Not sure exactly what level this is at, but it's certainly expect a dielectric constant below 2, and it's about the best type of insulation you can get. This cable then has a 100% foil shield around it, and then an 85% tinned copper braid to reject noise from the outside. And it doesn't run cheap. It's £40 a metre. I got it from MCRU, who used to be a channel sponsor. Got a bit of a deal on it. Still paid £30 a metre, needed 13 metres, so it was about £400 for the cable. But the cheaper ones would have saved me 200 quid. I'm only going to do this once, so I thought, why not get the better quality cable? The power cords that I use are from a channel sponsor, Isol-8. These, I think, are called the IsoLink Wave power cords that retail for around £270. There's a choice of different plugs, all very good quality plugs, and the cable itself has this turquoise outer jacket. It's quite flexible for an audiophile cable because it's made out of PFA, which has a very good dielectric constant, around 2.1, so very close to PTFE. Certainly a big step up from PE and PVC. And the conductors themselves are silver plated copper. You can see the plugs on the other side. Again, there's a choice of different plugs. Silver cables that you see there, they're just standard cables, captive mains leads that you have on my exposure amp, so I've just done that myself. And whilst I'm on cables, I may as well talk about the signal cables as well, which I use. You can see them there. Apart from the blue one, that's just the standard Mogami AES EBU. But the interconnects and the speaker cables and the USB cable that I use are Chord Signature. So Chord Company, their signature range. See the speaker cables running there. And I did find there was a significant improvement when I stepped up from the Chord Epic to the Signature. So that's £400 to around £1,000 for a standard length. And I'm very happy with those. This is the front of the Isol-8 Integra power conditioner that I use. Not much to see, there's just an aluminium shell, but take a note of the size of this unit. It actually runs all the way to the back of that rack, and it's too big, too deep to fit onto the rack itself. And that's because it's got some big stuff inside, custom chokes, Mundorf inductors, and plenty of premium quality polypropylene capacitors, all wired up using silver plated copper wiring with PTFE or Teflon insulation. I pulled the Integra out so you can see what's on the back, and there are 4 regular current outlets on the right and 2 high current outlets on the left, and that's why this unit is big, because it needs to be able to cope with the high current demand, otherwise it would strangle dynamics. A lot of mains conditioners clean up the signal but reduce the dynamic ability of your amplifier, and this one doesn't, and that's why it's not cheap. It's over £3,000, I think £3,250 last time I checked, but this is a significant upgrade in my system. I'd say that this makes more difference in my system than the dedicated mains supply. I've had it in and out of the system, and I've had it plugged in to the regular mains, and the dedicated mains obviously sounds better with the dedicated mains supply. What it does is it blocks the DC, so it removes any DC which will upset transformers, and it also reduces the 2 main forms of noise, which is common mode noise, common to both conductors coming in on the mains, and differential noise, which is just noise on one conductor. So it removes both. Impressive unit, like I say, but comes at a cost. Okay, so once I'd installed the dedicated mains and Isol-8 products, I was pretty happy with how this room was performing in the mids and highs. I felt it was better than the old room, which didn't have a dedicated main supply, but the bass was a bit of an issue. There was more boom than there was in the old room, which was to be expected to some extent because this is a smaller room and I was listening up against a wall boundary. I needed to deal with that and put in some acoustic treatment. So I approached GIK and said to them, listen, are you interested in working with the channel, maybe coming on as a channel sponsor? So that's in the process of happening, and organise getting some panels. Just before I get into that, I do want to say that I am really appreciative of my audience. They've managed to get this channel to a point where it's grown, and I can pick and choose to some extent the channel sponsors that I have, and the ability to basically approach companies and say, listen, send me something, let me see how it works, and if I like it, I'll take you on as a sponsor. You know, that is a privilege and it's not lost on me. So there's 5 panels across the front that you see there, and there's another 5 panels at the back. There's also a massive wraparound couch which has just come in the last 2 weeks, and I was conscious you can go absolutely nuts with acoustic treatment and you can over dampen your room. So let me just show you closer up to the panels at the front first. So here in the corner, and it's exactly the same on the other side, are GIK SlatFusor 4S bass traps. Measurements are 1200 by 600 by about 120. So in old money, that's what, 4 by 2 by 4.5 inches. And you place them in the corner, bass traps, because that's where bass accumulates the most. So if you're going to treat bass, stick your bass traps in the corner. There's a bit of an air gap behind, which also helps to improve performance of any acoustic panel if you have them a little bit away from the walls. And actually hide some speakers behind there, which I use as reference. And then I have 3 SlatFusor 2S panels, which are half the thickness. They're 600 by 600, 2 foot by 2 foot, underneath the TV. I think from an aesthetic point of view, I was quite happy with how that turned out. Yes, of course, they provide a little bit of absorption and diffusion on the front wall, what I call the front wall, the wall behind the speakers as well. And before I show you the other 5 acoustic panels, there was something else I did that helped to clean up the bass as well. I was chatting at the Northwest Audio Show to the guys who run Stack Audio, again a channel sponsor, about the fact that I'd only recently moved into a new listening room, was experiencing a bass resonance issue. And they said, well, what feet have we sent you for your speaker isolation? And I said, well, these, the Auva 50s. They said, try the 100s, and sent me a set. And I was actually very surprised as to how much difference they made in terms of cleaning the bass and lower mids. Just a lot more isolation. And for those of you who are interested, those stands are old stands that I've had for almost 30 years. They're Target R4s. I think the company's taken up again in Canada, but for many years they were out of production. Very heavy duty stands, and they're lead filled with lead shot. In those days you could get away with doing that. And I also use the Stack Audio isolation products under much of my equipment. I know that not everybody believes in this stuff, but if you've got a highly resolving system, and depending on what you're listening for, I certainly wouldn't be going back to not using them. Finally, let me show you the other side of the room where I've installed the 5 other GIK panels. GIK will actually send you panels with your own images on there. They're the art panels. And here I have images of my family. That's why I blurred them out. I don't want those on full display. I'm sure they don't want them on full display either. I had to treat a lot of the rear wall because the listening position is fairly close to that boundary, even though I pulled the sofa or couch, as my American friends would call it, as far forward as I can get away with. But listening up against the boundary is never great, and if you don't treat that wall, you're going to get a lot of nasty reflections which kill clarity, soundstage and imaging. So there's 3 of those panels. They're 800 by 800 by about 120 deep, which is what, 2.7 by 2.7 by 4.5 inches, and they work very effectively. What was less critical was the sidewall, because in fairness the first reflection point is taken care of by the sofa itself, but I didn't want a big reflective surface, so I've put two smaller panels there, 600 by 600 by about 70 millimeters. That's 2 foot by 2 foot by just under 3 inches, and they help also to achieve some acoustic symmetry with the window on the other side, which breaks up flat reflective surfaces on the other side of the room. Finally, about 2 weeks ago, the new sofa arrived. It's massive for this room anyway. It's over 3 meters in length, it wraps around the corner, and that acts as an absorber as well. So all in all, I'm very happy with the changes made. Okay, I hope you found that interesting, and perhaps some of you may have got some useful tips out of it. My question for today is, what are your experiences of your room and other rooms that you've been in, the good, the bad and the ugly? Please share that in the comment section. I'll look forward to receiving those. I'm sure you know what to do by now if you want to support me here and what I do. Like, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification. Check me out on Patreon. There's a couple of tiers you can access there if you think I can help you on your audiophile journey. Also check out the ABA Club on Patreon, which has some great ways to interact with me and fellow Patreons. But for today, for now, I'm British Audiophile, signing off.